You're listening to the Cyberwire Network, powered by N2K.
Surprisingly, the nation-states will be quieter, and maybe that's not surprising, but they have more patience. Their motives are different. They're not trying to ransom you, and they don't want to be burned. They don't want to be identified.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CyberWire's Hacking Humans podcast, where each week we look behind the social engineering scams, the phishing schemes, and criminal exploits that are making headlines and taking a heavy toll on organizations around the world. I'm Dave Bittner from the CyberWire, and joining me is Joe Kerrigan from the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Dave.
Got some good stories to share this week, and later in the show, my conversation with Joshua Neal. He's the Chief Data Scientist for Securonix.
The start of the year is a great time to take that next step in your education, career, and beyond. Rely on N2K certification prep to provide the tools to help boost knowledge, skills, and confidence to get you there. And now, for a limited time, all N2K certification practice tests are 40% off. Visit n2k.com/certify and use promo code N2KVDAY. That's N2KVDAY to save 40% on your purchase. That's n2k.com/certify with promo code N2KVDAY. Offer ends Monday, February 19th. Happy learning.
All right, Joe, before we jump into our stories, we've got a couple of bits of follow-up here. You're going to kick things off for us. What do you have to share?
Yeah, Dave, I wanted to follow up on the story about my identity theft. I actually had a conversation with the counselor, I guess, advisor from my identity theft protection service. And she was telling me some things. Of course, I mentioned last week about the credit holds you can put, or the fraud alerts you can put on your credit report, and how one is for, you have 1 year and 7 years. But something new that I didn't know you could do is you can request or tell check systems that there's been a fraud incident on your person.
Yeah.
Right. And then once check systems knows about it, the banks know about it, and they won't let anybody open an account in your name without you being physically present in a bank branch.
Oh.
Which is actually the way it should be anyway, I think.
Huh.
But I found that interesting. So I'm doing that.
So it's kind of a global thing where if someone tries to open a checking account in your name, it puts a flag on it?
Yeah. I don't know if it's global. It's certainly national in the US, but it puts a flag on my identity in the check systems database that says, don't let this guy open an account online.
I see.
Make him come in.
I see. Interesting.
Which I don't know.
Maybe that should be the default.
Yeah, these young people today opening their bank accounts online, I don't.
Yeah, that's right.
Angry old man shakes fist at the way new things are done.
I want a banker that I can shake hands with.
Right. So
right.
it doesn't seem like something I would ever need to do. So I think I'm going to put this on my. I'm definitely going to put this on this check systems alert.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How quaint, writing checks. Huh.
Right. Well, yeah, I don't write checks. Actually, I do write some checks. I am kind of old fashioned that way.
Yeah. All right.
The matter's pretty much closed now.
All right. Well, good. Glad all's well that ends well, right?
Indeed.
All right. Some more follow-up. We got a question from a listener named Benji who wrote in. Joe, you want me to read this, or do you want to read it?
Oh, you can go ahead and read this,
All
Dave.
right. They say, hi, Dave and Joe. Love the pod. I was hoping you could follow up on advice for one issue you spoke about in your last episode. In your catch of the day, you said that we see people open up a Gmail account, change the name on the Gmail account to your name, and then send emails from it. Benji writes, I know this all too well. I work for a synagogue, and for over the past 2 years, we've been targeted by scammers. More specifically, our congregants have. People sign up for free Gmail accounts, change the name to our rabbi, and then email our congregants directly asking for help, gift cards for cancer patients or something like that. This scam has actually been documented by news outlets affecting not just our synagogue, but many across the country. We've covered this here before as well, Joe, haven't we?
Yeah, that happened at a church in Rockville that I went to.
Yeah. Benji writes, I've done everything I can think of to protect our domain and staff accounts, but how do I protect our congregants? Many of them are elderly or technologically challenged and may fall victim to this. We've sent out warnings, but these attacks happen every 2 to 4 weeks. So constantly emailing warnings is not helpful. I've also reported to Gmail and the Internet Crime Complaint Center several times because the scammers can simply create new accounts, there's nothing to stop them.
Right.
I suspect there's a list of synagogues with rabbi and congregant emails up for sale in the dark web, and it's being sold as a package, says the scam emails are almost identical. Luckily, we do not post our member directory online, but they have targeted any email published on our website or online bulletins. Any advice would be appreciated. Thanks for the work you do, Benji.
Yeah, this is a tough one, Benji, and I understand it's very frustrating, but you're absolutely right. These guys can target your congregants just by opening up a Gmail account and pretending to be the rabbi. And in fact, that's exactly what happened in the church that I was at over in Rockville. I think it's St. Mary's. The priest was saying to the congregation, I will never send you an email asking you for gift cards.
Right.
and that's, I think, the best solution for your rabbi. I don't, that of course relies on everybody going to services regularly, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a Jewish equivalent to Christmas and Easter where everybody shows up?
Twice a year, Jews.
Like twice a year Catholics. That you can't find seating anywhere in the church for Easter Mass. But,
certainly. I mean, there's Passover, and there are the various high holidays. So yes.
So maybe at those events where you have the place packed.
Yeah.
Have the rabbi make that announcement.
Right.
The more ears that hear it, the better. It's just, and it's, these people are despicable. They will prey on anybody they can and use these appeals to humanity, and they will impersonate a member of the clergy, and they have no problem doing this.
Yeah.
So it's, I absolutely get Benji's frustration. I share it. It is, it's difficult to deal with, but the only thing to do is continually tell people, we will never ask you for gift cards. Please don't respond to these kind of emails. Yeah,
and I think I agree that really education is the best avenue for this. Unfortunately, it's there. I don't think there's a technological solution.
There
to this.
isn't. These guys can go anywhere they want, and you're doing all the right stuff. You're reporting to the Internet Crimes Complaint Center. They're never going to catch these guys. These guys are out of the country. Probably in Nigeria. Nigeria is where they run a lot of gift card scams out of.
Yeah, I would also say that being consistent by not having these sorts of things, by not having legitimate requests come from the synagogue via email,
right? To
say, this is the only way we will put out these sorts of requests is through this. They will be on our website. They will be, some sort of more secure messaging system than just sending out an email and sticking to that.
Right.
So that it doesn't get fuzzy, that people don't expect that to be something. So that when you say you will never get an email requesting money from us, that is so.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
But yeah, boy, it's a tough one.
It angers me.
Yeah.
It really angers me.
Yeah. All right. Well, if any of our listeners have ideas for this, we'd love to hear from you. You can write to us at hackinghumans@thecyberwire.com. And if we have any good solutions to this problem, we'll be happy to share them with our listeners.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's move on to some stories here. And I'm going to start things off for us. I've got an interesting story here. This is from a couple weeks ago. And Apple not long ago released their AirTags product.
Right.
And it received a lot of attention. This is a product that uses, it's basically tracking the location of the AirTag itself. And it uses the fact that there are so many iOS devices out there in the world that when this device gets in the proximity of an iOS device, they communicate with each other over Bluetooth. And the iOS device says, hey, I was near an AirTag. Here's the ID of it, and here's where it is.
So it's kind of like Tile.
Yes, it is just like Tile, which is an interesting point to me that a lot of people got their dander up over AirTags and the ways that it can be used to stalk people.
Right.
There's been reports of it being used to, people have attached them with magnets to expensive cars. So they know where the car goes at night, and then it makes it easier for them to steal the car.
That's very creative.
Yes. But it's what's been interesting to me is that when Apple came out with this product, which is, as you say, essentially does the same thing that the Tile product does, Tile didn't receive the media attention that Apple did on this. And I think on the one hand, look, nothing attracts web traffic like a bad story about Apple, right?
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there are people out there that like bashing Apple.
But also, I think, Apple runs at a different scale than Tile does.
I would agree.
A lot more of these AirTags are going to be out in the world.
And they're leveraging their own communication platform, right? So,
and there are so many more iOS devices, too. So I think there's some legitimacy to that. This story, however, is fascinating in that a researcher took an Apple AirTag, put it in the mail in Germany, and this researcher was trying to figure out, this is an activist named Lilith Whitman, and evidently Germany has let's say an intelligence agency.
Every country has an intelligence agency, Dave.
Well, yes, but this one's called the Federal Telecommunications Service. And there was suspicion that this was a camouflage authority for a secret intelligence agency.
I see.
So, this is the plain white van outside.
Flowers by Irving.
Right, exactly. And so what this activist did was sent a package with an AirTag in it to this agency to see where it went. And they could track where it went.
And they got that information back, I'm imagining.
They got the information back from where the AirTag went, and so was able to verify the existence of this agency, but more importantly, where they reside. Right? So,
because they have a shipping program, right?
Yeah.
This is this is an intelligence agency's front company.
Yes.
Which intelligence agencies do all the time.
Yes.
So nobody should get bent out of shape about this. This is just the tradecraft of intelligence agencies. I mean, you can argue that maybe we shouldn't be doing this, but it's the state of the world. It is what it is.
Sure.
So this company, this agency set up this company. They receive packages, and when they get packages, they go, well, we better send these back to headquarters.
Right.
And that's what they did.
And that's exactly what they did. Yes. And so the location of headquarters was revealed.
I will bet that every intelligence agency, once this story broke, has changed their policy if they hadn't done so already.
Yeah. Well, and it reminds me of we had stories, I don't know, it's probably been over a year now, where you had soldiers and other agents of the government who had
using a fitness app?
Using fitness apps,
right.
And so they were able to, basically the fitness apps were mapping out their routines, their morning exercise or whatever.
It was aggregate data. I can't remember which fitness app it was, but they were saying, look at all the aggregate data to see where people all over the world run. And then there were like these hotspots in Afghanistan where a bunch of people were doing exercise, and you're like, who has cell phones and is Afghanistan that needs to keep fit?
Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly. So I think this is interesting for a lot of reasons. To tag on to the Apple story, Apple, in response to some of the criticisms about AirTags being able to be used for things like stalkers,
right?
They've updated some of the functionality of it. Evidently, I think the AirTags will sort of signal their existence more often if they're not near the iOS device that initialized them.
Right.
They make a beeping sound, which after a certain amount of time, I think it's 24 hours, something like that, which is designed so that if, for example, I dropped an AirTag into your coat pocket to keep an eye on you, after 24 hours, if that AirTag wasn't within the proximity of me, it starts beeping to alert you that you have an AirTag on you.
Right.
And so you'd say, what's that beeping noise in my coat pocket? Pull it out and say, Dave.
Right.
He said it again.
I'll bet you can open that AirTag up and disable that beeper.
Well, funny you should say that, Joe, because there was a gentleman, where there's a need, there's a supply, right? And there was a gentleman who set up an Etsy shop of modified AirTags with their speakers disabled, and the shop didn't stay up for long.
Yeah, Etsy took it down?
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. They're still out there selling them. It's just they're not selling them on Etsy. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me when when my youngest child was a toddler, we got him one of those Exer-Saucers. You know what those are?
Yes. My daughter and son both had one of those.
Yeah. So an Exer-Saucer is a little thing you plop the kid down in, and it has a bunch of different little activities. This one had you put the kid in this little, I don't know, like a little seat they sit in, but
it's like an old walker, but the kid
without the wheels,
without the wheels, and
so
the
they
kids
can't go down the steps into the basement,
like my sister did when she was a kid.
Right, but the seat on this one had ball bearings, so they could spin around and get to these different things. And it's great. It works great. You go, you stick the kid somewhere. You know where the kid is. The kid is occupied. All good.
Yeah.
But this particular Exer-Saucer had a button that the kid could press, and it would play some electronic song. Let me tell you, Joe, it didn't take me long to get in there with a screwdriver and clip the leads on that music thing because it was driving me up a wall.
Right. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun.
Right. Ah!
Dun-dun-dun-dun.
Yeah. So anyway. All right. That is my story this week. Joe, what do you have for us?
Dave, my story comes from McKenna Oxenden, right here in our hometown of Baltimore, from the Baltimore Sun.
Okay.
And she has a great story about how Baltimore, the city of Baltimore, fell victim to a phishing scam. I don't know that I would say it's a phishing scam, although it's an interesting story. So here's what happened. Baltimore has a bunch of contractors it does business with.
Yeah.
Just like every other government does.
Sure.
And there was one contractor who had done business with the Mayor's Office of Children and Family Success. And the Inspector General of Baltimore City, who is named Isabel Mercedes Cummings, I believe. And she does audits of the city and finds out what's going on. And she found out that this office asked the Office of Payroll and Budgets, which is the actual payment office,
right,
to send $376,000 to a fraudulent bank account.
Oh.
So here's what happened. This is a business email compromise case, and we see this happen a lot. This business that does work for the city of Baltimore, their email was compromised. And this malicious actor actually sent emails to the city of Baltimore as a member of this company using that person's email address. And they said what we frequently see in these attacks. Here are some new banking details.
Right.
Okay.
Right. We've updated our banking.
We've updated our banking.
Here's the new
details.
information.
And this happened over a year ago. So in December of 2020, somebody in the office, the office, the children's office, received this email, and they went to the billing and payment office, the payroll office, and they said, we got to change these credentials. The payment was made. The bank had flagged the account as fraudulent and returned the money to the city of Baltimore.
Wow.
Right?
So the bank was the hero in this story.
Well, hold on, Dave.
Oh.
We're not done yet.
I spoke too soon.
You spoke too soon. That bank was a hero in this story.
Okay.
Right? A few weeks later, in January of 2021, these guys realize their bank account's been shut down, and they send another email to Baltimore going, our details have changed again. And Baltimore changes the payment address. This time they were successful in sending the $376,000.
Wow.
Once the bank realized it was fraudulent, the bank froze the account, and they managed to return $38,000 to the city of Baltimore. And the company filed a claim with their insurance. They had some kind of cyber insurance, and they got $50,000.
Okay.
So the vast majority of this money, close to $350,000, is gone.
Yeah.
The hackers got away with it, these malicious actors. So here's my question for you, Dave. What I'd like to discuss with you. Who do you think is culpable here? Do you think this contractor is more culpable, or do you think the city of Baltimore is more culpable, or do you think they both share responsibility?
Oh, boy, that's an interesting question. Who is on the hook for this?
Yeah.
So we could say the contractor is responsible because they did an inadequate job of protecting their own systems.
That's right.
They allowed this fraudulent request to come through their infrastructure.
Correct.
We could say that the city was culpable for not doing their own due diligence and verifying with the contractor that the change was legit. I mean, ultimately, I guess if we don't want to blame any of the victims, the bad guys are culpable.
Right. No, that's 100% correct. These guys are criminals.
Right.
And these guys are, but there's $350,000. It's gone. Somebody's going to have to bear the responsibility of that.
Right. And yes. And so you have to, yes. I get,
So I don't know who carries that. It's a tough question for me.
And I wonder what the insurance company said here.
Well, the insurance company said, here's your $50,000 at the maximum payment that you're entitled to.
See.
They gave it to them.
Yeah.
But so now the company is still out a bunch of money, right? I don't know. I don't know what happens here.
So, right. But I guess, so part of the question is what happens next? And I suppose, is the contractor, because it wasn't a legit request from the contractor. It's not like the contractor provided $350,000 worth of services.
Right.
But then that $350,000 of services went to the scammers instead of the contractor.
Yeah, it may actually be that the contractor did provide $350,000
right.
of services.
So in that case, is the contractor out the $350,000 because the city paid that money out?
Yep.
Based on information from the contractor.
Yeah,
the information came from the contractor.
That is where I tend to go with this.
Yeah.
Although,
and wouldn't it be up to the contractor to then go to their own insurance company and say, we got hit, so we want the $350,000 or whatever our policy is for.
And that's what they did, but they only got $50,000.
The contractor only got $50,000.
The contractor only got $50,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
so they weren't adequately covered, I guess you could say.
That's right. That's right.
I think this is going to be something the contractor just has to live with. It's but I will say this, that the article quotes finance director Henry Raymond, and he says they immediately strengthened internal controls. This is something we've been screaming from the mountaintop for a very long time, Dave, and that is whenever anybody does something that's out of ordinary the process, like changing banking credentials, that is something that requires a phone call,
right?
At a minimum,
right?
Because if the person in the office of Child and Family Success, if that person just picked up the phone and said, "Hey, are you trying to change your banking details with me?"
Right.
This would never be in the Baltimore Sun.
Right.
This would have been something stopped. Now, if the contractor had physical protections on their email account, like physical multi-factor authentication, like a YubiKey or a Google Titan or some kind of FIDO open standard. FIDO is an open standard, by the way.
Yeah.
We get comments. I seem like I'm endorsing YubiKey. I'm not endorsing YubiKey. YubiKey uses FIDO, and that's open. Anybody can build a FIDO solution.
Okay.
But if they were to put something in place like that, this would have stopped the account takeover because they never would have been able to just log in with just a username and password.
Yeah. So there are multiple opportunities from many parts in this story to have done better.
Right. I agree.
Yeah. Well, and I suppose that's money that isn't going to be used to help the folks in Baltimore, right?
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's money that's going to help some scammer and probably help him or her build but probably him, much larger empire of scams.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will have a link to that story in the show notes for the show. Joe, it is time to move on to our catch of the day.
Our catch of the day comes from a listener who calls themselves G, who writes, "Gents, this spam actually required me to do some research. Apparently, they are looking for Oracle credentials. Clue number one was that the email appeared to be forwarded by me to get past the email filtering system that some companies use. Clue number two was that I had no idea what they were talking about, hence the research. After looking at the header for fun, he says."
Yeah. I don't know what you do in your spare time, Joe, but looking through email headers is right up there at the top of my list.
They fed the link into VirusTotal, and one of the services found that it was suspicious. So this person says even though they use Linux, they did not open the attachment, which is wise, I think. Very wise. Right. So here's the message. Dave, why don't you read the message?
All right. The message is, "Hi, we've requested for DLT template to be activated on our account severally, but nothing has been done. Please find below for our DLT files and do the needful immediately. Recipients, Download link, one item, dlttemplate.rar, 200 kilobytes. Thank you.
So this is obviously an RAR is a WinRAR archive.
Yeah, a
And
compressed file.
Compressed file.
Yep.
Probably has something malicious in it. 200 kilobytes.
Count
Might not
on
be
it.
that big. Yeah.
Right.
What we see this frequently. I'd like to know there's some language this is being transferred or translated from rather. Do the needful. We see that phrase frequently. I'd like to know what language that comes from.
Mm-hmm. Do the needful. Yeah. That's interesting. I guess that'd be, I don't know how we could reverse engineer that, but interesting. All right. Well, good for you, G, for not falling for it.
Right.
That was a fun one.
Yep.
Again, if you have a catch of the day for us, you can send it to us. It's hackinghumans@thecyberwire.com. Joe, I recently had the pleasure of speaking with Joshua Neal. He is the chief data scientist for Securonics. Here's our conversation.
I think the actors who are executing these techniques are new, and they have different motives. So, the nation states for a long time, at least my career, 20 years now, they've been doing these kind of things. They use system tools that are built in. They don't need to import malware. They already have credentials, and they execute kill chains as described by MITRE attack techniques. These are our understanding of the nation state tactics. What we've seen in the last few years, however, is that the criminals have gotten more sophisticated, and they've begun adopting the methods of the nation states and doing the same things, living off the land, conducting extensive kill chain activity, multiple steps within an enterprise after the initial exploit or initial compromise in order to identify the right assets that they want to ransom or drop coin miners or steal information from. So we're starting to see a blurring of lines in the techniques between the nation states and the criminals. And I think that's why you're seeing so much success out of ransomware. These are human-operated groups. They don't drop ransom payloads on the first machine they get access to. They're penetrating further into the enterprise to identify really valuable assets that the company actually might be willing to pay a ransom for rather than, Joe user's laptop. And so I think the incentives, financial incentives of ransomware have aligned up with the need to go further into an enterprise, and that's lined up with more of these advanced techniques that look a lot more similar to nation-state behavior.
Can we walk through a hypothetical scenario together? I mean, suppose I'm the proprietor of Acme Widgets Incorporated, and I've got a successful business, a few thousand employees, and we've been making widgets for a decade or so. If a bad actor has me in their sights, can we walk through how they would go about doing the things that they would want to do?
Sure. I'll just use one example. I'm not going to represent every attack in this,
Yeah.
So in order to avoid a phishing email and the sophisticated blocking they would have on the phishing side, the adversary may run a brute force campaign against open-facing web servers for the enterprise. They would bombard the enterprise with millions, if not billions, of connection requests, authentication requests, and then get lucky and identify a combination of user and password, which will give them access. Once they have access to this open web server, it's fairly trivial to escalate privileges and be able to install arbitrary software on that server. Typically, they'll want some element of command and control installed. So there'll be a remote access tool of some kind, along with persistence. They'll change the start menu and the maybe some registry changes in order to survive a restart or a reboot. From there, it's even among nation states quite common that the adversary doesn't know the internal authentication topology, where they can get to, what assets, and services are available. So they'll conduct internal reconnaissance. A lot of times this is in the form of port scanning or attempted authentications to various assets. They may do some recon on the machine itself, listing, connecting machines to that machine, accounts, maybe scrape memory to get more credentials from memory from that machine. Once they identify likely next hops, they'll laterally move. This can be done through remote code execution or an actual interactive login, like a SSH or RDP, to another machine. And sometimes the next hop is the victim. They want to drop a ransomware payload on that victim machine because they've found maybe a SQL server with a whole bunch of important data on it. But commonly, even that next hop isn't enough, isn't attractive enough, or maybe they want multiple victim machines. Typically, they do. So they'll continue this iterative process of sort of reconnaissance on the box and on the network, followed by a lateral move, followed by reconnaissance on the box and on the network, followed by a lateral move. In the government, I used to work for the Department of Energy. We'd see kill chains, and even at Microsoft, we would see kill chains that were 15, 20 steps long. The SolarWinds attack was extremely complicated in terms of this structure of lateral plus recon. But eventually, they find the right victim machines. And in this case, since it's a ransomware attack, they'll drop payloads and execute them. And at that point, the victim machines are encrypted, and they'll obviously send a painful message to the organization saying, you better pay up or you never get your data back.
What sort of timeline are we talking about here? Is this happening quickly, or how much are they? How patient are they? How much are they biding their time?
So it depends on the threat actor, and it depends on, I think, mostly on the threat actor and their efficiency. Surprisingly, the nation states will be quieter, and maybe that's not surprising, but they may take longer. They have more patience. Their motives are different. A lot of times they're not trying to ransom you. They're trying to establish persistence and perhaps steal critical information, and they don't want to be burned. They don't want to be identified for a lot of reasons, one of which being political, that this could be a problem for their nation. On the other hand, criminals will move fast. They'll smash and grab, and they'll be loud about it. Not always, but commonly. Even so, with these kill chains, it varies. If we're talking about a proper human-operated ransomware with well-targeted victim machines, I would estimate that it's anywhere from 6 hours, to a week or two to execute a full ransomware attack. We have seen attacks which took more than a week. And then on the nation state side, we'll see persistence for years. We'll see attackers that are in for 6 months, then they'll do something, then they'll go quiet, then they'll do something else, and this will happen for years. However, there's a trend, and I have a bit of a fear, and I hate to do FUD.
Sure.
But there is something coming, I think, which is any human sort of sequence of events. I'm a data scientist, right? So I think about automation. I think about how can I write AI to mimic what the humans are doing. And most of the time in defenses, what I'm doing is decision support. I am not replacing humans, but I'm accelerating them. I think we're seeing this on the offensive side as well. One can imagine a day when the decisions made by the human attack team are coded, and with a bit of reinforcement learning or other sort of more advanced analytical techniques, I think many of the tactics currently executed by humans are going to be executed by machines. At that point, if they don't care about being quiet, I could imagine millisecond level attacks instead of 6 hour level attacks. Mm-hmm. I think we'll see much faster process of lateral and recon to identify the right victims, and just blindingly fast move through the network, drop the ransom payloads, and they're done. So I don't know how soon that's coming, but if it occurs to me, I think it's probably occurring to our adversaries.
Again, going back to that business person who's doing their best to defend their own network, how much of this is, putting, and I'm totally going to mix metaphors here, but how much of this is putting bigger locks on the doors versus, I don't have to outrun the bear, I have to outrun you?
Yeah. It's a tough one, and I'm not a guy who would say that protection or prevention is impossible. These two things go hand in hand. The more protection you have, the more effective your detection is, because you're reducing the attack surface and you're simplifying the detection effort. But on the other hand, I don't think either protection or locking the gates or leaving the gates open and having some kind of, zero trust, constant authentication sort of approach is the smoking gun. I think it's just like everything, a moderation between, investing in protection technologies, antivirus, get your authentication and credential portfolio and plan together. Yeah, these kind of things, vulnerability management, assessments, red teams, these are preparing and preventing. And then on the detection side, a similar level of investment. I don't think you can put all your eggs in one basket, I think is the answer.
Joe, what do you think?
Dave, I speak for a lot of Joes when I say I object to the term Joe user.
It's kind of like I feel really sorry for all the nice women out there whose name is Karen.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
This concept of living off the land is interesting, right? Every computer comes with essentially tons of tools. Computers are very useful and very powerful nowadays. Remember when we were kids and they just came with an operating system, Dave?
Yeah, in ROM.
Right.
Yeah.
That was it. And it didn't have any tools. You wanted tools, you had to load them up. Now the operating systems come with all these tools. And like I say all the time, tools are useful. They can be used to build a house or tear it down.
Right.
Right. This software isn't malware.
Right.
Right. PowerShell is not malware, and Secure Copy is not malware, but they can be used to do very malicious things. So your virus protection is never going to stop you or help you stop somebody from using a legitimate tool to do malicious things like exfiltrate data or change configuration or ensure persistence, right? Criminals are getting more sophisticated. We've been saying this for years. It's interesting to see how Joshua's watching this evolve from the criminals adopting what are nation state tactics.
Right.
I wonder, are these criminals learning from nation states, or are they just following along the same evolution that nation states have always been on?
Well, and there's also the speculation that some of them are moonlighting, that they are nation state employees, let's say, and in their free time, they use the skills that they've acquired for personal profit.
Yeah.
And the nation state organizations are willing to look the other way.
In some nation states, I'm sure that's fine.
Yeah.
The hopping around that Joshua describes when moving laterally, this is how I used to get around the internet. Do you remember this? I would
go on.
in the 1990s. I actually am proud to count myself among one of the first 1 million users of the internet, because if you look at internet users over time, when I started using the internet in 1990, there were less than 1 million users. So
I suspect I'm probably on that list. Yeah.
But that's how we used to get around. We used to telnet into one computer, and then I could use that to telnet to another computer and hop around.
Sure.
And I'd have connections going from 1, 2, 3, and I'd exit out and have to exit all the way back out. This is age-old stuff that people are still using to move around current networks. Nation states and criminal organizations, while they have the same kind of techniques, they're going to use different tactics in those techniques. They're going to use them differently. Nation states want to be very, very quiet, and they really want to lay low in these environments because their goals are very different from criminal organizations. Criminal organizations want to monetize the attack, and they want to do that as quickly as possible because they're like a business. They have time pressures. Nation state actors do not want to do that. They want to know stuff, and that's a different motivation. Joshua's warning about automation and AI is accurate, I think. AI, again, just a tool. So it's going to be used by these guys to tear down houses, right, if you will.
Right.
It's interesting to see how we've gone from not enough data to way too much data, which I think is probably an accurate, or almost certainly an accurate statement, because false positives are the bane of an analyst's life.
Yeah.
Chasing down a false positive makes people miserable. It's one of the leading causes of burnout, I think.
Yeah.
I think I remember reading something about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I like what he says about chaining these indicators together. You know, a single indicator could be a false positive. But when you start seeing a bunch of indicators in a row along what is the cyber kill chain, you can start to filter out a lot of the noise and see a lot of these things. Like, you know, somebody running a port scan, that's probably bad. But if the user is someone like me, and I'm a developer and I got to look at my machine to see what ports are open, I'm going to run a port scan on it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's going to cause a security analyst to go, hey, Joe, why are you running port scans? And that takes time.
Right.
Out of his day. But if that port scan then results in me connecting to some obscure service and then that machine connecting to another machine, that's not something I generally do.
Yeah.
So chaining those things together can be, I think, very telling.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the notion of these systems looking for behavioral things, like you say, not just indicators of compromise, but what are you actually doing?
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, our thanks to Joshua Neal for joining us. Again, he is the chief data scientist for Securonics. I have to say, Joe, I love talking with data scientists.
They're interesting people.
They're always interesting conversations.
I like his story, too, how he started as a statistician and got into cybersecurity.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, thanks to Josh Neal for taking the time. All right, that is our show. We want to thank all of you for listening. We want to thank the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute for their participation. You can learn more at isi.jhu.edu. The Hacking Humans podcast is proudly produced in Maryland at the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. Our senior producer is Jennifer Eiben. Our executive editor is Peter Kilpe. I'm Dave Bittner.
And I'm Joe Kerrigan.
Thanks for listening.